Here we have Stellars in Charge, and Stellar is a 16-hand 4-year-old thoroughbred gelding by Take Charge Indy, which is, of course, an AP Indy line. And if you are looking at our bridle situation, I am in fact riding him in a hackamore, and this was the first time I've ever ridden him in a hackamore. And it is a lovely, freezing cold, windy day, per usual, it seems now in Maryland. And so the reason I'm riding him in a hackamore, which is of course a leap of faith because this is just your most basic English hackamore that you can find. So basically it's a dressed up halter and lead rope. I mean, there is no, I hear people talking about hackamores with leverage and all kinds of stuff, and I don't know which ones those are. This is the most basic bland hackamore, and you have no extra leverage. It's literally just a fancy halter and lead rope. But anyway, the reason I'm riding him in it is because on Tuesday I tried a different bit on him and it pinched him on the inside of his cheek. And so, of course, your options are to either not ride him until the pinch heals or to ride him in a hackamore, which of course avoids the bit. So I chose option B, the hackamore. And of course, I'm only going to do this if I think that it is a very quiet horse with a very good brain, because doing this on a cold, windy day for the first time, on a horse that's only a couple of weeks post track and super green, it's definitely a leap of faith. But Stellar was an absolute champion and he could not have been better. So I'm so happy with him. He is just such a nice little horse and he's going to be so fun for somebody. So basically, in this ride, we we flat around a little bit, and he's not going to be super round, of course, because you're on a hackamore, and steering is slightly questionable at times. But we're just assessing the fact that he's letting me even do this, and he's being such a good sport about it. It's unbelievable. He did not put a single foot wrong. He had no thoughts about any silliness whatsoever. He was a total champion to just sort of go with it, and he did every single thing that I asked him to do. I thought it was highly impressive. And actually, he was so good that after we sort of flatted around a little bit and determined that it was all systems go and everything was functioning, we introduced him to poles and little tiny jumps, which is incredible considering he's in a hackamore for the first time and the weather conditions and all the things. So he was a champion today. And he's so cute because he really likes being fussed over. He's very happy when I make a big deal about him and tell him how wonderful he is. He sort of like arches his neck and he prances a little bit, and I can just tell that he really likes it. He likes being told how wonderful he is. It was so windy. The quarter sheet was getting blown around a little bit, which is kind of annoying, but it straightens itself out. Anyway, his left lead canter transitions have been his harder. It's interesting because the left is actually his easier direction, but for whatever reason, he wants to pick up the right lead. And I have this is common. I have it with a bunch of horses. It is interesting to me that that's sort of how it goes. But anyway, we've been working on our left canter transitions, and he did such a nice little transition over that pole. That made me very happy. And Stellar is one of those horses that has a great canter. It's very balanced, very rideable. And on a cold day like this, with any horse really, except a very seasoned schooled horse like my personal horses, I'm going to start cantering in half seat just to let their backs really warm up. And then once I feel like they're settled into the canter, backs are warm, they've had a minute, then I'll introduce sitting, which is honestly no different than how I would introduce sitting in them on the first place. But I'm especially likely to give them some time in half seat when it's such a cold day. And then I was sort of laughing to myself because at some point here coming up, I kind of drop the reins and I just ride around on the buckle, which is really not a big deal because he doesn't have a bit in his mouth anyway. So I hardly am really influencing what's going on to begin with because I'm riding him in this hackamore. But nonetheless, in a hackamore with no bit, you can drop the reins and ride around on a loopy rein. Steering might be a little bit tougher, but you can safely do it. He was a very good sport about tolerating all of this today and being such a good boy. So this went so swimmingly well that I thought, what a perfect time to start introducing poles. So of course we took a nice long walk break and during that walk break we walked over pretty much everything in the ring, which was no big deal. And I have to say, I think what really impressed me about this sort of first adventure over poles was how smart he was about cantering away. First of all, he very naturally picked up cantering away from the things. So he very easily figured out that the pole is a great place to have a transition into the canter, which obviously we already saw when I picked up the left lead canter earlier in the ride. But he was so smart about picking up the correct lead as we went over whatever the thing was. And honestly, just landing in such a nice little canter every time. Very good boy to his coop. And again, just every time he goes over something and lands in the canter, he always is so smart about listening and picking up the logical lead. What a good boy. That was very cute doing his little pile of poles to pile of poles and then coming away in a very nice little left lead canter. Again, just very brilliant, very good boy. And then we're just going to do a grand finale over the larger raised flower box. And I think that that was plenty for one day. He actually did a lot today. So yeah, I couldn't be more pleased with this horse. He was such a trooper. And he's going to be such a fun horse for somebody to bring along.